Many shows come and go without trouble or fanfare, but it's definitely different for talk shows such as Dr. Phil. After being on air for almost 2 decades, Phil McGraw has surely captured the attention of viewers of all ages with his straightforward approach to topics related to mental and physical health, relationship dynamics, and for giving those living through life's hardships a platform on which they could be heard. There aren't many things which can bring down the reputation of such a long-running show, or that's what most people think. However, besides having its fair share of detractors, Dr. Phil has faced a lot of controversies along the years. So, whatever happened to Dr. Phil? Is it still on air, or have scandals finally taken a toll on the show? Keep with us to know all the recent whereabouts of Phil McGraw and his show. Fortunately, for those who love the show, Dr. Phil's current popularity and success on TV is as strong as ever. Since its inception in 2002, Dr. Phil has maintained quite a stable spot on television, also gaining international syndication on top of being nominated yearly for the Emmys. When it comes to ratings, Dr. Phil has rightfully earned the title of King of Talk Shows due to its impressive numbers. In mid-2019, Dr. Phil reached an important milestone by hitting its 150th consecutive week as the most watched syndicated show in the US, with over 2 million viewers daily. That doesn't mean the show's ratings are any less impressive during premiering episodes, as it reportedly reached a new high in the talk show category during March 2020, an acknowledged turbulent period for TV due to the start of the pandemic. Knowing all of that, it's unsurprising to find Dr. Phil's place on TV screens secure, apparently for years to come. As it happened, in 2018, the show was renewed for 3 years, in addition to its already running renewal, which means that Dr. Phil will stay on the air until at least 2023, when his 21st season comes around. Despite the overall positive image that his acclaimed career on TV has gained him, Phil McGraw and his eponymous show have faced a fair share of negative allegations and rumors, some of which have caused outrage, and a couple of lawsuits along the way. Here are some of the most famous and alarming Dr. Phil scandals, proven and unproven. A big part of Dr. Phil's success is owed to how Phil McGraw is able to advise and sometimes guide his guests and patients through life's difficulties, by using empirical insights and apparent psychological knowledge. However, the title of doctor in front of his name might be quite misleading, to say the least. Contrary to popular belief, Phil McGraw is not a physician. Instead, his title of doctor comes from his PhD in clinical psychology, obtained from the University of North Texas in 1979. He worked as an independent therapist for the first decades of his career, but hasn't had an active license in psychology since 2006. While many people don't think his lack of license to practice psychology is important, not having the proper credits to offer advice as a professional is a concern to the medical community. As the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill stated in 2004, Phil's methods could warrant him a legal sanction. He seems to offer a definitive diagnosis, including a pharmacological assessment, without careful evaluation or referral. Though years have passed and Dr. Phil hasn't been on the receiving end of any legal action from this institution, the professionalism of his methods is still questioned to this day. Most people see Dr. Phil as an effective platform to help people, which was why, when the show was accused of purposefully handicapping and even ruining patients' road to recovery, it was disheartening to say the least. Many TV fans remember Todd Herzog, who won Survivor China in 2007 when only 20 years old. After receiving his $1 million prize, Todd's life spiraled down due to his alcoholic tendencies. Following a 5-day-long hospitalization, the result of a seizure he suffered due to his high alcohol levels, he entered rehab, but without successful results. Todd's mother Shirley took her son to Dr. Phil for help, but viewers were flabbergasted to see a very intoxicated Todd not being able to even stand alone on set. The dramatic episode ended with Todd being taken away after his breath analysis turned positive. The story didn't end there though. In a 2017 investigation by Stats News featuring Todd, he affirmed being sober before his infamous appearance in Dr. Phil happened. However, the easily accessible alcohol he affirmed was left in his dressing room, in addition to being provided with Xanax by a staff member, made it easy for him to become intoxicated that fateful day. Of course, Dr. Phil's production staff denied everything and defended the treatment methods, but Todd's allegations weren't easily forgotten. Knowing how hectic the entertainment world is, it isn't surprising that its workers are often stressed and pressured into fulfilling the industry's expectations. However, It's very worrisome when a boss purposefully uses his or her power to play mind tricks on employees, as allegedly happened in Dr. Phil. It all goes back to April 2015, when the segment producer, Leah Rothman, was called in on a day off for a job meeting with 300 other show employees. Allegedly, Phil McGraw locked them all in a room, took their phones, and accused them of filtering secret information to the media. The scary situation was apparently planned beforehand, according to Rothman, who affirmed that Phil had cue cards he would read while berating his employees. Nonetheless, the worst part was knowing Phil allegedly already knew who the culprit of the information leak was before the meeting, using the situation just to scare other workers. Reporting Dr. Phil's not very ethical behavior didn't go anywhere, so Rothman quit her job and filed a lawsuit for emotional distress and false imprisonment, but the case was resolved through an out-of-court settlement. People with addictions appear very often in Dr. Phil, though Caitlin King Parrish's case was evidently more worrying than others, due to the fact that she was pregnant when her mother Joelle sought help for her. After agreeing to go on the show, Joelle was allegedly left alone to deal with Caitlin, despite the fact that Dr. Phil's staff knew a drug withdrawal was possible after their arrival in Los Angeles on the show's filming day. As Joelle affirmed during an investigation by Stat News, the show had been keen about ensuring Caitlin's unborn baby's well-being, but left Caitlin to wander around Skid Row's neighborhood for a shot during a dangerous trip filmed by a staff member. Joelle accused Dr. Phil of using that video to add drama to the show. It's not surprising at all to find out that Dr. Phil most likely pays for guest appearances. Nonetheless, due to the sometimes sensitive topics touched on the show, it's somehow disappointing to think that there is some business between patients and Dr. Phil. One of the examples of Dr. Phil paying its guests with no positive results is that of the actress Josie Goldberg, who made several appearances in it without being properly compensated, even though she's a member of the Screen Actors Guild American Federation. She filed a lawsuit against the show for the $10,000 they allegedly owed her, but ultimately lost the case. Another example of a paid guest is Dina Lohan, who in 2012 appeared in the show to talk about her daughter Lindsay's arrest. However, the interview turned out disastrously, and Dina looked disoriented and didn't answer questions properly. Her ex-husband Michael, who was present at the interview, not only accused Dina of being severely intoxicated, but being paid quite well for being there. She did get $50,000, and that's why they were pissed that she didn't give them the interview they wanted, he told Radar Online, while also affirming that he hadn't been paid. In 2011, America became fascinated with Ted Williams, a man with a blessed voice for radio who was unfortunately homeless on top of being estranged from his family due to his problems with addiction. While Ted's rise to fame immediately landed him many job offers from radio stations, Dr. Phil McGraw invited him onto the show and convinced him to enter rehab. Nonetheless, while Ted agreed willingly, he left the treatment only 2 weeks later due to it feeling fake. It became somewhat of a scripted circus, and a form of anonymity was lost, he told NY Daily News. However, he also affirmed he loved Dr. Phil and wasn't trying to bash him. Some people might remember Lori Bembenek, a former police officer accused of killing her ex-husband's wife, as the protagonist of the so-called biggest case to hit Milwaukee ever, due to its cold-blooded details but confusing evidence. Even though she escaped from prison in 1990, but was later detained again, Bembenek was ultimately released soon afterwards, having served half her sentence. Bembenek's next decade in freedom wasn't the best though, as she developed post-traumatic stress disorder and addiction to drugs and alcohol. She was invited onto Dr. Phil in 2003 in exchange for them paying for a DNA test which would allegedly clear her name and prove her innocence. However, Bembenek's appearance in the show never happened, as prior to it, she jumped from the second floor of an apartment Dr. Phil's staff put her in. She claimed she was intrusively tapped during her stay and had a panic attack. Her lawyer later claimed her living arrangements were agreed to be on the first floor, but the show's staff hadn't complied with it. Bembenek's fall severely injured her foot, which had to be amputated, as described by a lawyer. In an attempt to pay for these tests, she lost her foot. Bembenek never cleared her name and died in 2010. The name Shelley Duvall might not sound very familiar to people, but her role of the terrified wife in The Shining is recognized everywhere. Unfortunately, Shelley's acting career wasn't very prolific afterwards, and people lost track of her for decades until 2016, when she was invited onto Dr. Phil. The McGraw affirmed he was trying to help Shelley. She was evidently not mentally well enough for an interview. Her appearance in Dr. Phil was heavily criticized, and accusations of using her case for alleged exploitation were soon to come. One of the strangest lawsuits to ever come out of a reality show is definitely the Dr. Phil's Naked Man, as the media captioned the case. As it happened, in 2007, Shirley Dio and Crystal Matchett agreed to appear in the spin-off special, Dr. Phil's House, in exchange for receiving counseling on mental health from Dr. Phil McGraw. However, the situation took a weird but traumatic turn for both women. According to court papers, they were uncomfortable with the way the show locked them in a mock house, with no windows and way out. Furthermore, the week they agreed to spend there came to an abrupt end when they were invited to dine with Dr. McGraw, only to find a male completely naked waiting for them, a sight which totally terrified them. After insisting on being let out of the house, Dio and Matchett were released. 4 years later, they filed a lawsuit for negligent misrepresentation, emotional distress, and physical harm. Though the case was apparently moving forward, an out-of-court settlement brought it to an end. Everyone knows how many difficulties Britney Spears went through during her 2008 breakdown. Tabloids all around the world reported her unfortunate state, and many were concerned about her breaking her privacy. As it happens, Dr. McGraw was very interested in Britney's situation too, to the point of convincing her parents to let him into her closed rehab facility to speak to her. Dr. McGraw eventually met with Britney, but a statement of how she still needed treatment following that encounter wasn't well received, as it was considered intrusive and inappropriate by the Spears. The family basically extended an invitation of trust as a resource to support them, not to make a public statement, as the family's representative Lou Taylor affirmed. All in all, there are many former patients of Phil McGraw grateful for his counseling, but the many controversies related to the doctor and his show are not to be ignored. However, are Dr. Phil's wrongdoings enough to erase its good actions? That's for you to decide. Then, as some cynics say, any publicity is good publicity. Thank you for spending some time with us. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpick these videos which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question in the comments below. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you back tomorrow.